Welcome to Bitcoin Live with the bigger picture. With me is my co-host Sid. Welcome, Sid.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, my friend?
I am good. Just super busy in all the news that is happening right now.
Yeah, that's
Crazy stuff is happening.
you. Want to say something about it before we dive in?
No. Let's dive in because I'm more concerned about the current affairs. All the wars is happening, so I'm totally busy in reading those news, and that's a lot of them. It's happening everywhere,
Yeah,
and then it ties up to one conspiracy anyway. But let's continue with our regular episode, and then I will jump in whenever it's needed.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, we got a really big show. I even asked Douglas to, take into account that there might be a little bit overlap because this might be a 2-hour show. I got a lot of clips as usual. It will be like a little bit chaotic finding my way through all these clips. I did sort of subscribe to an ad blocker for YouTube, so there won't be any annoying ads anymore. So I now
Oh,
have a premium account. Yeah, so maybe the
that's good.
streaming will also improve. Yeah, so I think we should sort of start off with the pyramids because that will tie into a lot of this stuff. It will be about time anomalies and time travel and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about different theories. We present some really cool, wacky theories. It will be fun. It's just presenting sort of different theories. And yeah, we knew about the pyramids because we already did a show about it. And there was this guy. The guy was called Philip Biondi, I think his name was, from the top of my mind. Filippo Biondi. And Jay Anderson, he did some clips and interviews with him. And I want to play some of those clips because a lot of people were skeptical about those claims about sort of these huge structures underneath the pyramids. I'll show them right now because Filippo Biondi, he did a SAR technology scanning of the pyramids and he found these gigantic structures underneath the pyramids. So these are sort of this is the Khafre pyramid, one of the Giza pyramids, and he found these gigantic 2-mile long cavities or pillars beneath the pyramid. So a lot of people said like it's nonsense. This guy is full of it. But who is this guy? So let's find out who Filippo Biondi is.
Khafre pyramid. So Professor Filippo Bionde is a signal processing researcher specializing in synthetic aperture radar technologies. He has a PhD in telecommunications engineering from the University of L'Aquila, and he has held academic positions at institutions including Sapienza University of Rome and the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. His research is focused on synthetic aperture radar or SAR technology, Doppler tomography, and underground imaging. And he is now dedicated primarily towards his project called Harmonic SAR, which aims to advance the overall development and deployment of SAR technologies, the same technologies that have been deployed in these recent studies of the Giza Plateau, which the team believes have revealed a massive network of subterranean structures extending below the Khafre Pyramid and the Giza Plateau itself.
So that's Filippo Biondi. I also got his bio over here for the people who still are doubtful about his credentials. So that's over here. I also had another clip, but I just clicked it away, so I have to see if I can really quickly put it up again. Anyway, I also have this one. Give me a second. This will be about you. By the way, you can see he's done a lot of work, a lot of papers, and a lot of.
Go to his bio. Let's see his bio. Like, where is he from? Where was he born? Where
He's
did he study?
he's Italian. He's
He's
Italian.
Italian. Okay.
Yeah. And he did synthetic aperture radar images. He also worked with the European Space Agency. He is a telecommunication engineer from Salento University. He did like tons of stuff. Like
he is genius.
He's pretty much
Looking at his profile, like he worked with SAR as well. Of course he had to work with SAR, otherwise he won't be able to do any of that research. But yeah, he went to he's not a doctor, right?
He's professor. So he's a professor in his specific field, and he's one of the specialists when it comes to SAR, like world specialist when it comes to SAR technology. And this is sort of his sort of reasoning why they sort of came to the conclusion that these signatures and these things underneath the pyramids were actually real and not a glitch.
We were, me and Corrado told me, Filippo, what are those things? No, Corrado, that's noise. The first day, the first week, the first month, but the second month we say, Corrado, we have changed the radar, we have changed images, we have changed everything, and always these shafts were completely visible. And so, how you say, by our consciousness, we announce it to everyone with a certain probability that is very high. People, there are the shafts.
So, ahead of time, you released before that presentation in March, there was a series of abstracts and 3D graphics that were released. How confident are you that the 3D renderings, the 3D images of the pyramid structures that were released in the abstract, how confident are you that these images represent what is below the Khafra pyramid? Because there have been, again, critiques online saying that this is artistic representation. So how confident?
We thank people that critique, because critique is, in my personal opinion, always constructive. That's good. I give you the answer. I can tell you 90% why, so very high. Why? Because in order to perform, so draw, so make that 3D model, we have analyzed 1 year of tomographies, maybe 200 tomographies. 2 computers, 24 hours, 7 days were processing tomographies. So we have at least 200 tomographies acquired with different, let's say, tomographic lines, different images, and different satellite systems. Different everything, same results.
Wow. There have been comments from some researchers, including the theory that these might not be structural elements, but void spaces that we're seeing, maybe even filled with water. What do you think about these ideas that they're not structures, but might be spaces or gaps which have been dug down into deliberately or connected into the water table and are filled with water? How do you address those claims?
I tell you this, in my personal, but in the opinion of the research group, are not natural voids, but artificial voids, because we have found the typical fingerprint of anthropic structures. So 90-degree angles, spirals, rooms, something straight. No, they are not natural. I'm sorry. I have to reject, but I thank always people that make critiques. I thank them because are always constructive, but
So there's been a lot of data before he made this decision, and it was not just his decision, but his team, right, that worked on it. And another criticism that I also want to sort of tackle, because I think it was a valid sort of criticism put forward by I think the guy was called Riddle. the archaeology guy, and he sort of pointed out, like, why are you gonna use this technology on the pyramids before testing it out in some other place, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we talked about last time. But turns out he actually did test these technologies in different places. So I want to play that one too for the critics. So these technologies have been very well tested.
Or to use this technique on the Giza Plateau, I made a lot of experiments. This technique born for performing the infrastructure monitoring of large bridges,
Right.
in order to retrieve principal component analysis of vibrations of the bridge. In this context, we made a very interesting project in collaboration with European Space Agency in order to analyze this issue. And then you can see, if you go on the web, you can read my papers about the bridge monitoring.
Am I correct that you also use this for the Gran Sasso National Laboratory and the Mosul Dam as well in Iraq?
Yes. I used the same technique. You can find the results on my website, www.harmonixar.com. And so where I have produced the inside the scanning of the Gran Sasso. The Gran Sasso is a huge mountain where I born in L'Aquila, Italy, central part of Italy, where inside in the 80s, thanks to our professor Zikiki, who is a physicist, decided to build up a huge laboratory inside the Gran Sasso. Why? Because it was an optimal environment to study so-called muons or neutrinos. It is very interesting. Once I went to visit the laboratory, and the principal project that they are working for is called the Gerda project, seeking the...
So, he's not just anybody. Like he works with like the great names of the world,
Yeah.
great scientists. And
Yeah. Also, as he explained that he already tested it, then why the hell scientists were complaining that they didn't test? We as the audience didn't know, but as a scientist, if you're criticizing something, you should know better. It means their criticism was just was biased, was there to muddy the water. They are bad actors. All these
yeah,
scientists who were complaining about it, they are bad actors. Don't especially people like Flint, Dibble and stuff. We all
Flint,
have
that's
seen,
his
yeah,
name.
we
Flint
have
did.
seen him getting destroyed by Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan podcast and so many other places. So I
Yeah,
never
so
trusted them,
yeah.
but I'm just saying, all the people who trust these guys, what are you talking about? You can see the proof that he did test, and this was their biggest argument, that we don't know if these tests are correct. They are correct. They have shown the result. So
Yeah, and there's also they also put out their report, right? Because that was another element, like that there was no peer-reviewed report, but you can sort of just access it if you want it. So so it is there to peer
yeah.
review.
And
So
who cares if it's peer reviewed or not? Because I don't even believe on those peers. And secondly, who peer reviewed Plato's document? They
true.
are they didn't need that. So in fact, peer review started like 100 years ago. Nobody who peer
Now,
reviewed Newton's document. Tell me that.
I totally agree, and what peer reviewing today is often a form of gatekeeping, because it used to be that you publish something and then everybody can look at it. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like a plumber or it doesn't matter who you are. You can sort of publish a scientific idea or scientific
Yeah.
paper, and then people can look at it. Sort of that's the idea of peer reviewing. But these days, you first have to be accepted in an elite circle before you even can publish a scientific paper.
Yeah.
Or so
Yeah,
there's already
exactly.
sort of
This
a
is a tool
gatekeeping
for
going on.
gatekeeping, as you said. We should not care about those things anymore, because actually science have destroyed itself since 2020. Everything they are doing after that, they're getting exposed by everyone. So just go back to the regular thing where somebody publish stuff, anybody can go read and make your own
Yeah, no, I think
decision out of it.
there's some legitimacy to it, but I think Eric Weinstein did a really good job to demolish sort of what has happened. It has been completely demolished, or politicized, and he demolished it. And it has also, of course, there's a lot of money behind it, which has also corrupted the field, as many scientists know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we are talking about time anomalies, time travel, all the fun stuff, right? And then we'll go into some really wacky stuff. But we started with pyramids. First of all, okay, so apparently it might actually be real, right? So that's super cool.
Probably real.
Very likely real. I still have to wrap my own mind around it because it's too crazy. So that kind of means that the civilization that built these pyramids must have been extremely advanced, right? Because otherwise we can't build something like that.
Yeah.
So there's already a time anomaly right there.
Yeah.
Because that shouldn't be real, right? That can't be real according to our timeline.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in order to sort of buttress that, this is sort of a phase or an ostrich egg from 7,000 years ago. And
that's a treasure.
Yeah, and on it you see the river the Nile, right, depicted, and the 3 pyramids of Giza, which shouldn't be there, right, because they didn't exist officially.
How old is this?
7,000 years. 7,000 BC.
7,000 BC. Wow. So 9,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
So that's another time anomaly right there.
How did it survive for that many years?
Yeah, I think they found it in
No, but I'm just saying, why didn't it decay? Because eggs rot.
Yeah, that's not a real egg. I think it's ceramic.
Okay, ceramic. Okay, then it makes
it's egg shaped.
Okay.
Not like a literal egg.
Okay.
Okay, and then we got, of course, the structural elements of the Giza pyramids. Right here, you see the base of the pyramid and sort of the perfect alignment. This used to be covering the entire pyramid.
Exactly.
So that's quite a feat, right, for the people living.
Look at the precision on this.
Yeah,
it's like it looks like a modern day marble finish. Like tiles, you have tiles in the house. They are like finished like that.
You see how big it is, also.
Oh my God! Yeah,
or tiny compared to. So, and then you got, of course, the other pyramids. We already talked about the Bosnian pyramids, but we haven't really highlighted the Chinese pyramids, right? Because there's also Chinese pyramids.
Chinese, for some reason, hide their pyramids. They have a thing. I was reading that. Like they have the most pyramids in any country.
Yeah.
Like if you talk about number of pyramids, China have the most pyramids, but they hide it.
Yeah. And I want to read this part because this is actually something that I'm going to sort of dive into a little bit. This is from Jay Anderson from Project Unity. Did you know that the Mexican archaeologists found mercury in the chambers of Teotihuacan? Teotihuacan, thank you for that. Pyramid. The chamber has been sealed at the end of the tunnel for nearly 1,800 years. Pyramids in China also have rivers of mercury, and Sanskrit texts speak of mercury engines. So that's very interesting because there was this piece from History Channel. Now, I'm not a big fan of History Channel because I don't like the style, and there's a lot of crap. But they do have some really cool stuff. And this image that you see here, I'm not going to play it because they're fanatic about copyright and stuff. But Ancient Aliens did a special. I haven't seen it, but this is a clip from it. It's 3 minutes long. And this is about the Vimana model aircraft. So the Vimana model aircraft is Indian.
Yeah.
It's from the Sanskrit texts.
Mm-hmm.
And you got this guy who's also from Skinwalker Ranch, Taylor, what's his name? Taylor something. And he did a test, like a flight test. And he's an aerospace engineer. And at UC Irvine tests an aircraft model that was built using measurements from ancient Hindu texts. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the text also contain information on how to build advanced spacecrafts. In this clip from season 12, episode 11, Voices of the Gods, he sort of demonstrates that these vehicles, based on these texts, can actually fly. They're aerodynamic. So they actually put them in a test. So, and the point is, the point is that these things supposedly flew on Mercury.
Oh, okay. Also, they look exactly like a saucer-shaped UFO.
Yep. So anyway, so that's a really interesting clip. I can highly recommend watching that. Then we also have another pyramid. And that's over here. So this is also a time anomaly, right? You know, you shouldn't have flying Sanskrit vehicles, right?
Yeah.
that shouldn't be real. Wait, before I
Also,
go.
also Vimana is like, some of the ancient Hindu temples, the top part is exactly look like that. It's not just one floor, it's like 5 different floors, and it's like in pyramid shape, which flies. That's one Vimana. And then there is one Vimana which is just like a straight up disc, and people just sit on that.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
there are different types of Vimanas. Actually, I've seen. I mean, seen in the art, not in real life. so, so whatever the descriptions I found in the animated versions of their battles, wherever I've seen, there are different types of it, and then it also parallels with the magic carpet theory in Arab world.
yeah.
People just make fun of it. There is a possibility they had a Vimana which people mistook or miscategorized as a magic carpet,
Yeah.
which flies.
Yeah, because it's sort of disc shaped from the side, right?
Yeah, it's like a
Cylindrical.
just thin stuff like a carpet. So people, and it usually didn't even come from Arab side; it come from Persian end. Persians have those ideas of magic carpet.
So I'm also not going to play this one. This is the Antikythera object that they
Yep.
found near the island of Antikythera. It's like to the south of Greece, which was a mechanism that they found in one of the sunken ships. There was a lot of stuff on the ship, but one of them was a sort of encrusted object. And it turned out that that it was a very sophisticated machine that allowed for, to display like it says, the sun, the moon, and the planets at specific times. So you could sort of wind it forward and backward, and it could predict eclipses and all kinds of things in the future, but also back through time. Right? So it sort of was a very complicated machine that shouldn't have existed. And there were also no prototypes, right? There were no sort of developments before and after, right? That sort of came into existence out of nowhere. They only found one of these.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to play this one because it's from the BBC.
Oh yeah.
But they sort of they did a scan of it. Let's see if I can. So they scanned it. Oh yeah, here you can see it. They put it in a scanner, and then they found encryptions, text on the machine itself.
Oh, let's see if we can see some inscriptions.
Yeah, I think, like for example,
there. Which language is this?
I think it was Greece, or sort of Greek.
Greek.
Oh yeah, and there was actually another. Wait, now that you say it, there was another news element, which actually ties into this which we just talked about. Give me one moment. I'll find it. I think.
There is about this anti-cathedral mechanism. There is a legend. I don't know how true is that, but they used it for navigating as well.
yeah, yeah,
Actually,
because
it's not a legend. It's like the scientific explanation of it that they were using it for navigation. That I think makes it more complicated. How how the hell they just come up with this computer? Basically, it's a computer which can help them navigate, and they have nothing else going on. No scientific theory. There is something bigger than that, and it's like way more ancient. I think because the Greeks are like we have a well documented history of Greece. Like
Mhm.
we know what they could have done, and because of Plato, Aristotle, and all those guys, so we know that they did not have mechanism like that to build such
No,
things.
no, no, no. This is sort of out of the ordinary, and so they found out the thing that I was looking for. They recently found out that the Greek language or the Greek alphabet was much older than initially thought. I think it was like 1,000 years older than they initially
I
thought.
read that somewhere too recently.
I can't find it, but it should be somewhere. It's like a recent study that they did.
Hmm.
So, but talking about language, we also have this one, which is basically also ties in with anomalies, and this is from I always forget his name.
Yeah, me too.
It's underneath there. I'm not sure, but anyway,
Also, I really have listened to him a lot of the time, but I always forget his name for some reason.
I think it was something with Duncan, but I'm not sure.
No, I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, let's go.
Anyway, so I'm gonna skip it because I got a lot of other clips. But basically, what he's saying in this really great video, you should watch it. But it's like pretty long; it's 40 minutes. That there was this pre-Inca language that was basically an algorithm. It was structured like an algorithm, and it was a very unique language. There was basically only one in the world. And this guy that started researching it found out that it was the perfect way to translate other languages. Wait, maybe I can play a little bit. Okay, let's see.
Manuals and other reading materials. And in 2001, it was capable of translating Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, Romanian, and English, all using Aymara as the bridge language,
Aymara.
the mother tongue of the software, as Guzman put it. Now, Guzman battled for funding and kept trying to get more people to focus on Anomalies until he passed in 2022, but it does seem the software fell into disuse. In 2001, with a then top-of-the-line 800 megahertz Pentium processor, it was capable of translating 700 words a second. A second. In 2001. In multiple languages. That is impressive. It worked so well because of this way the Aymara language was structured. And that secret was something that Guzman uncovered when he was teaching Aymara children. He noticed that they consistently had problems with Western mathematics, in particular things like 3 times 4 and 4 times 3 both being...
Anyway, it's a very interesting video, but it's sort of like another anomaly that I want to sort of highlight. I want to skip over it a little bit because we got too much stuff, and I don't want to linger on it too much. But there's sort of, all these kind of anomalies that are found all over the place. You got this guy, Michael Cremo. He wrote Forbidden Archaeology. Very interesting book. I actually have it here too. And he also wrote a follow-up on Forbidden Archaeology about how it was recepted in the scientific community, which is also a very interesting book. It's very well researched. And basically, this guy, he's very old now. This is a more recent interview with him, a short one. He sort of went through all the documentation, all the research, all the papers and journals, and basically everything that he could find, anything that he could find before they were sanitized. So he went through all the old archives of the past. And what he found there across the world were findings by journalists, by archaeologists, by researchers of things that were very ancient or found in very ancient strata that shouldn't have been there. And over time, the Smithsonian and other groups seemingly sort of went through that research material and sanitized it. And probably part of that is like a natural process, right? But you get sort of like a tunnel vision, and certain theories crystallize and solidify, and then it becomes sort of like it blocks your vision from seeing outside of it. You become dogmatic, but part of it might also have been done on purpose, right, to sort of hide the past from us.
It genuinely looked like somebody went too far to hide the past. Like
Yeah.
someone or something or a civilization or aliens or whatever. I don't know who. But someone did something that we forget about our history, because our history just suddenly appears. We
Yeah.
just, according, if you go by the narrative, like for hundreds of thousands of years or even for millennials, we were just cavemen. Hundreds of thousands of years at least. We've 200,000-300,000 years we were just cavemen, and suddenly we develop agriculture, we develop cities, we develop everything within 100 years, which is like right after Younger Dryas. That doesn't make sense. And then you, right after that, you build pyramids, do all those structures, and then you dump down again. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So there are a couple of good points that you raised there. I almost forgot those. Yeah, you got Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, and basically also about those two sites, they are now being covered up. Research is being stopped there. They are being turned into sort of tourist attractions, and they're actually also hurting and demolishing or destroying part of these sites,
Yeah.
because they're putting these beams in there.
And regarding Gobekli Tepe and Terran Tepe, they were deliberately buried. They were not like, there was no cataclysm which buried it. It was like the people actually buried it for some reason.
Yeah, that's also true. And they are both, and there's not just two of them. There are actually many sites around it, but both of them are sort of like in conflict with the official narrative. Like the official
Yeah.
timeline doesn't take into account these two sides. They still haven't acknowledged that sort of fact that Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe shouldn't be able to exist, right? They cannot have been constructed by cavemen or hunter-gatherers, or these are like gigantic megalithic sites with religion and all kinds of aspects that officially should take like thousands of years to develop, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's time for us to go into the crazy stuff. And there's no better person to go to than our friend Racer Giorgiani. So today we're going to do quite a lot of Racer Giorgiani, also some other videos, but I think it's a good place to start.
Oh, before we go there, I just want to. I was looking to what's his name? Jimmy Corsetti? Yeah, Jimmy Corsetti in Joe Rogan regarding the cover up by Turkish government.
Yeah.
And he gave a theory which I totally disagree, and I wanted to discuss that. He said because of the religion, they don't want these structure to be found, because like if they go dig deep into it, it will go against Islam, and Christian is, oh sorry, Turkey is Islamic nation. But this is where he is wrong, because it won't go against Islam. So there is no religious reason. Actually, it will prove the religion is like it will prove Islamic theories before the flood. So it won't go against the religion. I have studied religion a lot, all of them. And he said like it will prove Christianity, but Christians, Islam and Jews have the same past. Right before Abraham, they have the same history. They branch out from Abraham. So his theory that religion is the reason for uncovering it, I don't think so. Sorry, not for uncovering, for covering it. So I think there is some political reason or some spiritual reason, or like some aliens are doing that or whatever. But it's not the religion, because it won't disprove religion, it actually proves religion.
Yeah, and I think it was also his video that sort of showed the damage to these sites and the fact that they were turned into tourist attractions and that they stopped the
Yeah.
digging for the next 100 years. I think it was that they, and
Yeah, but in doing so, he himself was doing the same thing, because he ended up in the prohibited area where nobody was allowed to go. They
yeah,
were preserving it, but then he broke the law and entered there. So I'm not sure that I can trust Jimmy Corsetti, but I don't know. Maybe he's the right guy and he have the right mind but wrong theories. But I don't trust him either. So there could be some other reason they're preserving it for better equipment. There is also a possibility that they are so fragile that they don't have correct tools and they're waiting for them to
no,
develop. I don't know. I'm just saying there
no.
are theories.
I'll link the video down below, but I recommend watching it. I do agree with you. I am also not completely in agreement with him. With a lot of he was also the person who said like that beneath the pyramids, these voids that you saw by Philip Biondi, that they were filled with water and all that kind of stuff, right? I think that's kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
But with this site, and he has, I think, officially been blocked by the Turkish government. But he
Yeah,
went there.
but he have theories out there that he think Richard structure is Atlantis. I don't find it.
Yeah.
So he have some out there
Yeah.
theories. So I'm not gonna 100% believe what he's saying. That's what I'm gonna
Yeah.
just say. Anyway, let's go to Jojani.
Okay. So this sort of ties into these objects and Michael Kramer.
Smithsonian Institution and whatever, reporting on a gold locket found in a geological stratum that dates to 60 million BC.
Yes.
Right? There are lots of these finds.
But we don't know about those anymore.
We have those journals. We have access to those journals.
We still have access to
Absolutely.
the journals.
My point is, Cremo and Thompson, they wrote this tome, Forbidden Archaeology, where they go through all of this evidence. They present case after case. And they have their own interpretation of what this means, okay? Because they come from a kind of Vedantic, that's the book. They come from a kind of Vedantic background. They subscribe to form of Vedic religion. And in the Hindu religion, there is the notion that there are these vast cycles of time. They call them yugas, the ages, right? And we're in the last of them now, supposedly the Kali Yuga. But the whole cycle begins with the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, and then it goes to a Silver Age. And the Greeks had the same thing, Silver Age, Bronze Age, until you get to our present time, which is supposed to be the last of the world ages. And this whole cycle then repeats itself. So Cremo and Thompson come from the school of thought that, look, humanity has always existed, and we are living in a fallen world, we're living in a degraded age, and we've lost our knowledge of previous ages of higher civilization. And they think this goes way, way back, like that humanity existed in its present form tens and tens of millions of years ago. I don't agree with their interpretation of their own evidence. I think that that's a religious belief system, which they subscribe to. And my much more radically empiricist, pragmatic approach to the data they're presenting is to say the best way to make sense out of this is that these artifacts were left behind by human time travelers. And
so that's the first one.
Yeah.
But he does have a point there, right? I mean, it sounds kind of insane when you first hear it. But like with the Antikythera object, right, in Greece, like how the hell did that thing get there, right? It might be a relic from the past that somebody got hold of.
You know what? One thing I will say, that doesn't look like a future technology. It looks like an ancient technology. Because if we look at if we use ourselves, because it's our history, so our technology has evolved way further than those kind of machines. Now we use iPhone for everything. So I think in the future, I don't think we will build again those big models, because we prefer as a human, like as a human civilization to have small things, everything just in one device. So I don't know if in the future people will just build a device for that reason.
No,
It's
no,
like that big device. So
I agree with the Antikythera thing, right? I mean that sounds more like a relic from a distant age that somebody found or dug up or somewhere, and that they're still using because it was probably very easy to use and very accurate, right? So, but in that same sort of piece, he sort of points out, like he said earlier, like they also found really strange advanced stuff in strata from millions of years ago.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about specific Antikythera like mechanism, and everything else we'll discuss as we see it. But for this one, I just think if it's from time traveler, why would they take this big device with them? It will be much easier to navigate with the phone. And I know that I've seen a article where they have iPhone type of device. They found it in relics or somewhere.
Yeah. So let's see where I got so many stuff, man. Okay, where do I go next?
Also he was talking about like yugas, and a lot of the thing about yugas are like there was like a whole thing these fake scammers were doing, that Kali Yuga is ending in 2025. It didn't end. The date has passed. So don't put faith in every word people are saying, because Kali Yuga was supposed to end this year in 2025 or something.
And for the people who sometimes think these shows are really chaotic, that's because they are. Because I got so many clips, and I'm trying to find sort of a
and I find random things to say.
So anyway, I got a lot of stuff. I think.
Yeah, do you have any more clips of Giorgiani? Let's roast him.
Yeah, I think we'll just stick with Giorgiani for a little bit. This one we already played before, and this might actually help a little bit to bring some structure to our discussion and tie it to UAPs.
And what this guy said is that they are not only reverse engineering craft from retrieved debris in this facility, but they're actually training pilots to fly them. And he told me that the main problem that they have in that training program is that the pilots experience extreme disorientation because of the warping of space-time by these craft. In other words, they discovered early on, and this is, I think, one of the main reasons, and we can get into this in much more depth if you want. This is one of the main reasons this technology is being hidden, because they discovered very early on that these are not simply devices with propulsion systems capable of navigating space very quickly. Like they can take you from New York to Australia and, right? They're flying time machines. They warp time as they traverse space.
Right.
And our pilots don't know how to handle that. They have a very hard time. They get disoriented, temporally disoriented. They get their sense of the passage of time gets really messed with.
How do you know this wasn't just some sort of intelligence agent or intelligence operative trying to disseminate some wacky information like the other guy?
Well, if I were to tell you who it was, I think most people wouldn't think that. But all I can tell you...
That's the problem with this whole topic. That is the fundamental problem with this whole UFO topic, is because so many people have such crazy outlandish claims, and every single one of them, almost every single time, they're saying that this person, they can't divulge where they got the information, who the person is. And that's why this topic has been so frustrating for me.
Yeah. I'll tell you at dinner who he is.
Okay.
So he was, but I'll tell you this, he was an extremely salt-of-the-earth person. And he was involved in the military intelligence community for decades. And anyway, I'll just...
So we played this clip before, and again, like the first time you hear stuff like this, your head explodes. Like, you think like this guy is full of it. It's total bullshitting. Like he's making it up as he goes along, and he might be right. We don't know.
The problem. Anyway, continue. Then I'll say something.
Yeah. So, but if you know Ray Giuliani, you also know he's extremely intelligent. He has a huge amount of data at his fingertips. I think he has a photographic memory actually, and he's versed in countless topics. And he just, if you let him go, he goes, right? And he's very good at synthesizing information, like diverse information, and putting things to, connecting the dots, as they say. Only not, just connecting the dots, but really big picture thing. Yeah. So of course, if you do that, you can make you really huge mistakes as you go along, right? You have to make one tiny mistake and it will blow up in your face, right? Because it will have major consequences. But he has a very logical mind and a very logical framework. And the topics that he's discussing are, outlandish, right? I mean, even the people who are pretty grounded, like Hal Puthoff or Eric Davis or Ashton Forbes or whoever, right? Even those kind of people, or Kevin Knuth, the claims that they make in this space about UAPs are outlandish, right? Because it's just an outlandish field.
But Hal Puthoff, Ashton Forbes have science backing them up, and then they have a history. The problem with Giuliani is, yeah, he have a lot of information, but according to his own words, he have done espionage. He have done some misinformation work in Iran to overthrow the government and all those things. So he is that kind of a person.
But
according to himself, it's not like other people.
That's what I wanted to say. Like, he is very open about it. He's not making it. He's not a cloak and dagger kind of person, right? He's just putting it all out in the open. He's saying what he says. He does what he does. He's not making.
This is what I'm saying, because this is not his information. Somebody gave him that information. Maybe they found him and they said, okay, give him that information, so he will go and spread it for them, because he was doing that for other reasons, for political reasons. And he's not giving his source. Now, compared to Ashton Forbes, Hal Puthoff, and all those other guys, they are not Ashton Forbes, but Ashton Forbes is giving his sources and all the scientific reasoning. Hal Puthoff himself is a source. He worked in the Stargate. He actually was the founder of Stargate.
But let's sort of linger on what he says. So he says these UAPs are time craft, like flying time machines are his words. Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because when you dive into UAPs, people often have like time-space distortions. The ships are often bigger inside than outside. Time is being warped. People are being frozen. There's a sense of time lost. You got this in Skinwalker Ranch, all these time anomalies that they discovered there. You got it in the research of David Paulides, when he sort of does his research in the missing 411, the people who disappear without a trace. They're there one instant and then they're gone, and then they're found like weeks after they, went through the entire area like 10 times with dogs and whatever, and they can't find it. So there are sort of clear time anomalies associated with UAPs, like that's sort of a fact. And that's not so very strange, right? Because they apparently also, when you in our previous show, when we heard Kevin Knuth talk, they are gigantic power source machines that most likely are able to bend space and time in order to fly around, right? So they technically are time machines.
And nature produces that all the time. Like black holes, they are warping time and space. So it's not just a theory. It's like we have a living proof of that. Nature is doing that in space.
And then we have people like Ben Rich, the former director of Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works, who said in 1993, we already have the ability to travel amongst the stars, but those technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. So that's Ben Rich, right? That's not the first. So that would sort of undergird what Giuliani is saying. But we have more testimonies. We also have this testimony from somebody who's called Paul Sich. I think he's Polish. I've no idea how to pronounce that. But he was a Wright-Patterson Air Force engineer. And he's basically saying the same thing as Giorgiani.
When I was at Wright-Patterson, we had the flying saucers that went up. I think they covered the distance from Columbus to Detroit in something like equivalent of about 20,000 miles an hour. I don't think anyone in the ordinary aerospace business would have had any knowledge of what they were even talking about if you mentioned quantum physics or wormholes or the type of things we know now, because if you went to CERN and talked to the particle physicists, they would tell you certainly some of this was possible because they see it all the time. Where they think they see mass, they really see energy frozen in a time quantum, and what they're seeing is really a frozen bundle of energy, and it moves back and forth almost without any restriction. It starts out at hover and it literally almost disappears and pops over here. So it's not like a cartoon where it goes whoosh. It's almost like it disappears and comes up over here. If the physics that have to explain that are quantum physics in which things can appear to be almost two places at the same time and appear and reappear just like positrons and electrons do in some of the high energy particle colliders. Because conventionally we think of this as speeding through space, but what if it really acts like some of the high energy particles at CERN? They really transfer into energy and reappear over here, and there was no mass that went anywhere, because all mass is solid energy. And if you find a way to move back and forth with that, the conventional wisdom is that a complex organic structure like us cannot transfer back and forth from energy to solid, but that's because we've never seen it done. What you represent is solid energy. Now, what you see, you think you're solid, right? In fact, the distance between the atoms in your body are almost exactly relatively proportional to the same distance as the planets around the sun. So in fact, if you could look at your individual atoms, you would be 98% space. The only thing this one guy claimed that happened is if you bottle it and move it to another location and release it, he sounded exactly like Mr. Spock. He said you create a tear in the time domain of the local space.
Yeah, so I found it very interesting, and so what we're now gonna do is we're gonna be a little bit scientific. So this guy is from Wright-Patterson. He was like an engineer there. What was it? Paul Sish. I probably butcher his name. But basically what he's saying is, these machines or devices can manipulate space-time, as we were saying. And this researcher that I'm now, or this scientist that I'm now going to show, his name is Nima Arkani Hamid. He's a physicist, and he says that space-time is doomed. And that sort of ties into what this previous guy is saying. And let's listen to why it is doomed.
If you think space-time is something real, then you should be able to meaningfully talk about separations of space and separations in time of any arbitrary amount that you like. So we can talk about separations in time, seconds, separation in space of meters, but you should also be able to talk about it at arbitrarily short times and arbitrarily short distances. And we know that that's impossible because of gravity, because if we try to probe very, very tiny distances by the uncertainty principle, we have to use a lot of energy. And when we get to tiny enough distances, we have to use so much energy that we collapse the little region of space-time we're trying to look at into a black hole. And that makes it impossible to probe what's going on in that region.
Because so much energy by E equals mc squared, Einstein's famous equation, means that there's so much mass, the mass and energy curve, space-time, and it all collapses.
Exactly. And they make it impossible to see the region you were trying to look at. So this is a very simple thought experiment that takes together the two basic ingredients, quantum mechanics, gravity. You put together quantum mechanics and gravity, and you see that it's simply impossible to make sense of space and time separations that are smaller than a very tiny amount. But the distances and times that we're talking about are the Planck length, the Planck time, Planck length 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, the Planck time 10 to the minus 43 seconds. So we know that space and time, just from this simple argument, can't really make sense.
Yeah. So
space and time are things that we take for granted, but
my bad. It just went on plane. So space and time are doomed. And this is sort of what Donald Hoffman has been saying. And Donald Hoffman is another scientist. He's a psychologist who specializes in perception, but he's done a lot of work with mathematics and mathematicians in order to to prove, based on evolutionary theory, based on models and simulations, that our perception of reality is just that. It's perception, it's a headset, and it's not the real thing. And that headset that we wear is basically time and space. And time and space is nothing more than a construct that's created for us to make sense of the world that we operate in. But more fundamental than space and time and physicalism or materialism is actually consciousness. So consciousness is at the base of reality. And that's sort of the theme that we're gonna talk about. I think I got it here. Yeah, sorry. I'm sort of navigating through all these videos.
I've got a bit more of a basic question, which is, if space-time is doomed and has been shown to be doomed, why do we not hear more about it on the news, for example? I mean, it's a big deal, as you said.
It is a big deal. And I was at a conference just a few weeks ago on mathematical models of consciousness, where there were many physicists who are experts in quantum theory, and they were using quantum theory for their models of consciousness. And so I made a habit, as often as I could raise my hand and get acknowledged to ask a question, I would ask them, so what do you think about the new research that says that quantum theory is not fundamental because space-time and quantum theory are doomed? And to a person, none of them knew about this. And these are PhDs in physics. And the reason is that this result that space-time is doomed is a particular branch of physics. It's high energy particle physics. So physics is a huge, huge field. There's condensed matter physics, there's quantum theory, there's thermodynamics, there's lots and lots of branches. And you specialize. If you're going to get a PhD, you have to know one area really, really well. So most of them have no idea what are the new state of play in condensed matter physics, or the new state of play in this case, high energy physics. And so it's only 8 years out. So it's no surprise that it's not well known even among physicists, much less among cognitive neuroscientists, and of course the general population probably hasn't even heard about it at all. But again, in 1922, the Nobel Committee itself was not interested yet in Einstein's theory of space-time. So these things take time, but eventually they'll come around, and often it takes the old guard just dying, right? the old scientists just have to die, and it's the new generation that aren't attached to the old ideas, that love the new revolution. They take it and move forward. So that will happen. I just would like to not be one of the old guard that dies before it sees what.
Okay. So I'm gonna run. Oh, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just saying these scientists are pretending that they discovered something new, that space-time is doomed. Everyone who believes in any religion knows that time will come, the last day will come, and where everything will collapse. Like it just begin. Before the judgment day. I'm just saying they are pretending, they discover something. Everybody knew that. Why didn't they actually? Because the problem is science always discard religion. They never care
Yeah.
about it. But if they continue research in the parameter of religion and science, then they would find these discoveries a lot faster, because
Yeah,
it
well,
was there.
that's a,
Everybody knew that.
that's a good point that you make, because that's actually also what Donald Hoffman says. He's making exactly the same point as you do. But yeah,
Okay.
in religious texts, it's actually not a big surprise.
Yeah.
But it's funny that science is now discovering what religion probably already knew all along.
It's going to take a while, but
thousands of
I'm
years.
pretty confident that that's going to happen because human beings, scientists in particular, are just as dogmatic as anybody else on the planet. But science as a institution, a social institution, is not dogmatic. It may be slow to change its views, but it's not dogmatic because eventually data will overwhelm our biases, and the new theories will overwhelm our biases. So, for example, in 1905, it was over for Newton as being the fundamental theory of physics. It was over. But 17 years later, when Einstein won the Nobel Prize in physics, the Nobel Committee was very, very clear that it was not for his theory of space-time. It wasn't for his theory that overthrew Newton. It was for something else. It was something in quantum theory, the photoelectric effect. So what happened was it took a long time for even the Nobel Prize Committee to respect and believe Einstein's theory, even though it had already predicted, the change of the positions of stars in a solar eclipse and so forth. They were not convinced. Well, everybody's convinced now, but you can see that even if it's a genius like Einstein who has made what we now know to be one of the biggest contributions of all time, it takes the science a little while to, a few decades to catch up, but eventually it does. So I'm quite confident that, like this year's Nobel Prize for the experimental verification that local realism is false. That's just another clean nail in the coffin of space-time and physicalism. And so I'm convinced, by the way, that as an idealist framework starts to solve the hard problem of matter that Rupert was just talking about, where we start with a mathematical model, for example, of consciousness, and then show how precisely quantum field theory arises as a projection of the dynamics of consciousness, then I think things will turn around, because when you can start building new technology based on the new science that doesn't assume that space and time and physical objects are fundamental, then all of a sudden you're a Luddite if you still believe in space and time. You've been left behind, and so I think that's what's going to happen, is that there will be a new theory of, and it's already happening. There are physicists, Nima Arkani Hamed and others, who are finding new structures beyond space time. So the race is already on. Space time is not just that we're saying the space time is doomed. There are new structures beyond space-time that are being found, and eventually we're going to get new technology that goes around space-time. And when we have technology that goes around space-time and doesn't require the existence of matter, then all of a sudden you're not going to be the smart one in the room if you think that space-time is fundamental. You'll be the one that was left behind.
Yeah. So these things are pretty radical. I actually see also some people in the chat. Douglas, science done without religion, because then we would be back to the same old answer, because of God, and science is about why through reason of repeating construct experiments, not through thought experiment. Yeah, I totally agree. So what we need is like what some scientists like Bohm and others argued, is like a marriage between science and spiritualism, right? And that's also what Donald Hoffman is, because he's himself a scientist, right? So you don't want to discard the scientific method, right? Because that's how you improve and how you move forward. But you also don't want to discard sort of the inner spiritual realm. And what you would actually want is, to merge those two, or,
Also, I a little bit disagree with that, because it won't lead back to God. That's not
Yeah.
the study of science. How the model should be is like, how God, like for example, if you're talking about from a religious purpose, it's not like God did it. Yes, God did it. Okay, fine. But how he did it, we're trying to understand that. Then it won't be a question of just because God did that. No, we are discovering the method he used. And then we can use them as a reference. Like, okay, it is something about like the world is explained like that. And we should go and test it. For example, Big Bang is very much religious theory, which was given to us like thousands of years ago. And then science proved that after Einstein. So what I'm saying, like these are the theories which are there. Don't just say that, oh, this is because this is religion, we cannot take it. Why don't we use those religious texts and do our experiment on them and see if it works or not? And I think more in most of the cases it works. And examples, the biggest example is Big Bang.
Yeah, it makes sense. I sorry, I saw that some of my timestamps have been talking about time manipulation. My timestamps have been altered.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Also, Aristotle have a good theory regarding time. It's just a measuring tool of the bits of change. I think it's the measurement of interval and instance of change. This is like a theory of Aristotle, nothing to do with religion. I think he was wrong about most of the things, but this theory is really good. The time is just the measurement of change of event, not it doesn't actually exist.
so we're now gonna go to Skip Atwater, and I hope I got the right timestamp here. We're gonna try it. Let's see.
He said to me, was it at the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory?
Wait, I think it's 2:14. Give me one moment.
Oh, Skip.
Yeah.
I really like this podcast. Everybody should go and watch the whole thing.
Yeah, we're gonna try and play some clips from it.
Which I'm thinking right now, there's no space and time. I'm only thinking that right now. That wasn't part of the explanation. And he says, so what you do to get to Alpha Centauri is you just twist the cube. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I told you wouldn't understand. And he said, when the periodic table occurs in a different place, you're at that place. But what's the deal? And he said, well, you're thinking about going, my son can do them in 2 minutes. He says, okay, so imagine a Rubik's Cube, but not necessarily just the 6 sides. Use what information I have in my head and try to explain it to me. And I said, how do you get from here to Alpha Centauri? Okay, we can't do that. The only thing that we think about is I have to go really fast for a really long time. How is it that you can go to Alpha Centauri without any problem? And essentially he said, you wouldn't understand. So I said, I agree, that's a problem. However, I know that you have access to my mental thoughts. I mean, you're not talking to me with your mouth. You have access to my mental thoughts, and I understand that. Can you use what information I have in my head and try to explain it to me? And he said, well, do you know what a Rubik's Cube is? And I said, oh, yeah, my son can do them in 2 minutes. He says, okay, so imagine a Rubik's Cube, but not necessarily just the 6 sides. Just imagine the concept of a Rubik's Cube. And I said, okay. Now imagine on each one of the tiles on the Rubik's Cube has a chart of the elements, an elemental chart. And you say, oh yeah, I know what that is. You know, I've had science in school and everything. He says, now, on each of the other 5 surfaces, there's also elemental charts. And I said, so, okay, but what's the deal? And he said, well, you're thinking about going that way very fast for a very long time. What he didn't say to me, which I'm thinking right now, there's no space and time. I'm only thinking that right now. That wasn't part of the explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, so what you do to get up to Alpha Centauri is you just twist the cube. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I told you wouldn't understand. And he said, when the periodic table occurs in a different place, you're at that place. And that's just a very crude explanation. But you have to stop thinking about go that way for a long time very fast.
Yeah, so sorry, I had to sort of find the right timestamp, so I had to move it back a couple of times. So basically, this conversation is, well, Skip Atwater is super vague, right? He's super mysterious, or he's talking in riddles all the time.
Yeah.
He's one of those. He was a CIA counterintelligence officer and
founder of remote viewing.
Yeah,
program.
Stargate. He was like the first person who started it and who trained like the first remote viewers. And or no, he didn't train them, but he selected them.
He selected them. Yeah.
And he has a lot of very interesting stories. That's why I had these timestamps. But this one is sort of his experience with, I think it was an alien. And it's unclear if it was like, in what kind of setting. But basically he's asking this alien, like, how do you travel? How do you do what you do? How do you travel so far? And then basically he says it's like a Rubik's Cube. You turn it around and then you don't travel, or you're there instantly, right? Because you twist time and space. That's the way I understand it.
Also, again, from a spiritual perspective, time and space exist for us, but it's not a real thing. It's an illusion. It's like we are trapped in our physical body in this time and space prison kind of a world. So if you can figure out a way to get out of that, then there is no time and space, because the other dimensions, they don't work. But like when we live somewhere in this planet or in this universe, we do experience time and the space.
Yeah, but
it's a very strong illusion. Let's just say that.
And we have somebody to explain this illusion to us, like no one else. And we also played this one before, but this is a classic. So what is time? What is space? And what is the fourth dimension?
That shadow we recognize. It's, ordinarily drawn
Rubik's Cube
in third grade classrooms as two squares with their vertices connected. Now, if we look at the shadow of a three-dimensional object in two dimensions, we see that, in this case, not all the lines appear equal. Not all the angles are right angles. The three-dimensional object has not been perfectly represented in its projection in two dimensions, but that's part of the cost of losing a dimension in the projection. Now, let's take this three-dimensional cube and project it, carry it through a fourth physical dimension. Not that way, not that way, not that way, but at right angles to those three directions. I can't show you what direction that is, but imagine that there is a fourth physical dimension. In that case, we would generate a four-dimensional hypercube, which is also called a tesseract. I cannot show you a tesseract because I and you are trapped in three dimensions. But what I can show you is the shadow in three dimensions of a four-dimensional hypercube or tesseract. This is it. And you can see it's two nested cubes, all the vertices connected by lines. And now the real tesseract in four dimensions would have all the lines of equal length and all the angles right angles. That's not what we see here, but that's the penalty of projection. So you see, while we cannot imagine the world of four dimensions, we can certainly think about it perfectly well.
So I think, what Skip Atwater was actually talking about in that example is this tesseract, right? And I think that was basically what they were saying. It's like UAPs, or these vehicles, are probably able to manipulate space and time because they are, making use of the fourth dimension.
Yeah. Also, just want to say, Carl Sagan is a goat. No one is better than him. The way he says stuff is just like so fascinating that you get lost in his word. At least for me, whenever I hear him, I'm out of this world. I'm just putting all my attention to him, listening to everything he's saying. He's really different level, and no one can even come close to him.
Yeah. I did this, by the way, interesting. So Douglas says, I thought the rule was things can't see their own dimension. If that's true, we live in the fourth dimension, not the third dimension, because we can see and interact with the third dimension. It might be true, actually, right? Because
this is a theory as well. Yeah, it's called projection theory, where you're projecting from fourth dimension to third dimension, and we are just a reflection of another dimension. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, but that makes sense, right? Because human beings and everything that sort of lives is a projection of consciousness, right? So if consciousness is fundamental, as people like Donald Hoffman and these other physicists claim, then we are actually looking into, as Douglas says, we're looking into the third dimension, right? From the fourth dimension. So we're actually sort of entities that are beaming ourselves into the third dimension and putting on our space-time headset, which we can take off after we die. But that sort of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
In that way. But I'm not sure if that's
No, also one more thing. If anybody have watched Rick and Morty, there is like an episode of Roy, the video game. When Morty put it on, it feels so real that he lived a whole life over there, and then as soon as he died in that world, he took the game set off. It was like a very good representation of this matrix theory, that this world is just a matrix and you're just putting a headset on. I don't agree with that, but like if you look at that simulation theory, that's a very good animation episode out of it, if anybody want to understand. However, I don't agree that we are just playing a video game here. There is more than just a video game. It's more than that. We don't know. We will figure it out.
Yeah. So the problem is I don't have the timestamps of all the Skip Atwater things anymore. So I can guess, but I think we can also sort of move on to the next thing, which sort of ties it all together. And this is like a crazy story about a kid who was born in Russia. His name is Boris. And we're gonna...
If you talk about Russian, there will be only 3 names will come up: Yuri, Boris, and what's the other one? I don't even remember. Sergey. These are the Sergey, Yuri, and Boris. These are the most common names from Russian.
Yeah, but Boris is the most common. But yeah,
most common, yeah.
Okay, so this is about a kid. Anyway, now we'll just listen to it. It's a crazy story.
Boris Kiryanovich was a unique child ever since the day he was born. Most babies can't hold up their own heads until they're between 2 and 4 months old. Boris was able to hold his head up when he was just 2 weeks old. When his parents saw that, they knew right away Boris was special. That might seem like something small, but that was just the beginning of remarkable talents that Boris continued to show as he got older. Boris was born in 1996. He showed how intelligent he was very early on. After holding his own head up after just 2 weeks old, Boris started speaking very shortly after that. When he was 18 months old, he was able to read and draw. Because of his remarkable intelligence, Boris was able to start kindergarten when he was only 2 years old. His teachers were amazed by his advanced skills and how quickly he was learning. Even though Boris was only 2, he was placed well ahead of his classmates. In kindergarten, Boris wasn't taught about space or physics, but he still had plenty of knowledge about it. He had an in-depth understanding of the universe and he knew all about the stars, planets, constellations, and more. Experts in education believe Boris was a child genius due to his extraordinary knowledge of the universe. Being a child prodigy is incredible, but what was more incredible was the claim he made when he was 7 years old. His claim stunned his parents. And Boris told the group he lived on Mars in a previous life. He claimed to have been reborn on Earth, making him just as human as everyone else on the planet. He also said he wasn't the only one like him on Earth. Boris told everyone that he and the others who were reborn on Earth call themselves the Indigo Children. While Boris's claim sounds crazy, many people have come to believe that he was telling the truth. People stop at such a young age because they breathe in carbon dioxide rather than oxygens ever changed. He even went on Russian television for an interview where he told his fascinating story. Now that he was older and more articulate, he was giving more details. According to Boris, people on Mars stop aging when they reach 35. He says people stop at such a young age because they breathe in carbon dioxide rather than oxygen, the way that humans do. Boris says the people of Mars are very tall and their technology is very advanced. The technology allows them to travel through interstellar portals. Boris said that he could remember his life on Mars when he was 14 or 15 years old. He was an adolescent at the time, and during that time, the Martians were waging war on each other. Boris said he took part in air raids, and he remembered the friends who fought alongside him. While on Mars, Boris claims that he and his kind could travel through time and fly in space in disc-shaped spaceships. He also said that the people of Mars would observe the people from Earth as they thrived on the planet from triangular aircrafts that were used for shorter trips through the galaxy. Boris claims the Martians were remarkably advanced, but it's what led to their demise as well. The nuclear technology of the Martians allowed them to travel through the universe and through time, but it was also this technology that led them to eradicate their own race in a nuclear conflict. According to Boris, it was nuclear warfare that led to the destruction of their civilization. He said he was telling the story now as a warning to the adults of Earth. Boris says that the Martians who managed to survive the post-nuclear fallout were concerned by Earth to make changes to save ourselves. According to Boris, if we want to evade the dark nuclear future that looms over humanity, we need to open up the Great Sphinx of Giza. The name of the Sphinx translates to the Father of Dread, or the Terrifying One. Boris says that if humans can find a way to open up the Sphinx, we can unleash its secrets. This wasn't all that Boris said about the Sphinx. He also claims to know about its opening mechanism, which is located behind the ear. He knows that the monument can be opened from there, but Boris admits that he isn't entirely sure how to get it open. According to Boris, the Sphinx is not the only structure to hold incredible secrets. He claims the pyramids of Giza also contain secrets that go far beyond our wildest dreams.
So I'll stop it there. So this is one of those super crazy stories.
Yeah.
But the boy is real, right? So the story about sort of all the remarkable talents, that he could hold up his neck, that he went to kindergarten at the age of 2, that he knew all the planets without learning about them, all that stuff is true. There's actually a whole documentary about the boy. And the stuff that he says about Mars, even though it sounds ridiculous, he made those claims when he was 7. So apparently, I was sort of digging into Project Stargate and when all that information was released to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And that was around the time that he was 7. So the chances that he immediately knew about the declassified Stargate files on that day is pretty small, I think.
But there is a chance.
There is a very small chance. He was of course very learned, and very educated. So, but the other things, of course, he says is that the Martians were very advanced, that they were destroyed by a nuclear war.
This is a turnoff. I'll tell you, nuclear war scare is a turnoff because when he was 7, it was the time of the Cold War. Everybody in that era was afraid of nuclear war and they thought nuclear weapon can destroy everything. So this story just ties into that time period.
Yeah, but so he made those claims in 2004. Eh?
Yeah, right after that, everybody was scared of nuclear weapon in 2004. because because his information he was getting from his parents who lived through the Cold War, right?
Well, that might be true, but we're
what I'm gonna say, nuclear weapons are devastating, but they are not planet destroying. People will survive a nuclear war. They won't just wipe out everything. I think and right now as we are standing, there are far more dangerous weapons our government have than nuclear weapons. For example, they hinted at a time space manipulator weapon. Recently they did. So what I'm saying, nuclear weapon, all that story just ties in, and I think he made that up. His brain worked something up. I'm not saying he's lying. I think his brain did extra thing and just tied up all those loose ends about nuclear weapon and Mars destruction and the Stargate release. I think somehow, or maybe he's a good remote viewer. He didn't know that, and he got all that information and just mixed and created a mixture of it, and then making up this story, or not making up, but telling this story.
Yeah. So and of course he was also claiming that he was born, so that he was reborn on Earth, and that he was actually a Martian. So in a sense, he was also a time traveler, right? And you got the University of Virginia. I think it's called. I think I got it here somewhere. Here it is. The Division of Perceptual Studies in Virginia. They also do research into all kinds of things, but also people being reborn. In this guy over here, I believe he's the one who's doing a lot of research of people who claim to be reborn. He has, I think, like 30 years of documentation and research at the moment. There's actually a really nice documentary on Netflix called Life After Death, I think it's called. In episode 7, they sort of go through these cases of children who say they were born from a previous life, and then they have the markings of where they were shot, and they can remember they flew airplanes with a distinct model in the Second World War, and then it turns out that everything is correct about what they say. Well, there's all kinds of those kind of cases. So maybe Boris is actually telling the truth, right? But we don't know. I mean, I totally understand why you're saying what you're saying.
Yeah, because whenever you talk about devastation, all the people who have limited knowledge and try to make a claim, they always end up with nuclear weapon. But when you go dig deep, you know that nuclear weapon will not destroy everything. A lot of people will survive. Secondly, we have far more dangerous weapon than nuclear weapon, but those people don't know about it, and then they just take the highest thing and use the nuclear scare.
True. And like I said, this is a show about wacky theories, but I want to pursue Boris' claims. So let's see where they go. You say there's much more dangerous things, but what about this?
What Dr. John Brandenburg discovered regarding Mars. Dr. Brandenburg, who I got to spend a few days with in New Mexico a number of years ago, he worked on the Clementine mission for NASA, and at one point he was working at Sandia Labs, which is where I think a lot of the nuclear weapons are designed. And he was looking at isotopic data from Mars. So, every planet has, certain amount of isotopes of different materials and metals and so forth on it.
Right.
And apparently the isotopic ratio of xenon-129 is consistent across the entire solar system, except for on Mars and our thermonuclear test sites on Earth. There's a deviation from the norm of the isotopic signature of xenon-129 at our thermonuclear test sites on Earth. And we find the same thing at Cydonia on Mars.
Why is it different on nuclear test sites?
There's something happens when, and it has to be not an atomic bomb, but a thermonuclear bomb. When a thermonuclear bomb is detonated, that leaves a trace of xenon-129 in that area, which is not the normal, basically, distribution of that isotope that you would find, on Earth or on any of the other rocky bodies in the solar system.
Okay.
And according to Brandenburg, it's a very distinct signature. It's unmistakable, and it's very specifically associated with thermonuclear weapons detonation. Then, after he discussed this with one of the scientists at Sandia Labs, whose expertise is working on nuclear weapons, he checked for other isotopes, and he saw that the isotopes of the isotopic ratio of thorium and uranium was also off at Cydonia in a way that matched thermonuclear test sites. And so he came to the conclusion that, and even did the math, like how many nukes would you have had to detonate in this place to produce this kind of a deviation? Turns out that an Empire State Building's worth of our highest yield thermonuclear warheads would have had to have been detonated there to produce this kind of isotopic signature. And this is exactly the same place where we find these blasted megalithic structures on the surface of Mars.
So there's a nuclear war on Mars.
So Brandenburg's thesis is that there was a nuclear war on Mars. I cover this in my book, Closer Encounters.
And did that basically get rid of the atmosphere? Is that responsible for how like the atmosphere is almost non-existent on Mars?
It would definitely have been a contributing factor. I want to come around to what I think might have been another factor in that. Okay. But definitely would have been a contributing factor. But we were on about the moon. So why am I going on this this detour to Mars?
Yeah.
Because it's when you put Brandenburg's research next to what Joe McMoneagle saw.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, while we're on this subject, Ingo Swann was also tasked independently of Joe McMoneagle to look at Mars twice. Once was in 1976, I think, and the other was in 1984, same year that McMoneagle did his, but Swann's team and McMoneagle were unaware of each other. These were, obviously this makes sense as protocol. They wanted two sets of remote viewers on the same target to get, corroboration. And Swann did his with a whole team of people. McMoneagle worked alone at the Monroe Institute. Swann had like 5 or 6 people working with him. And in 1984, and also in the viewing in I think 76 or so, Ingo Swann and his team described exactly the same thing as Joe McMoneagle. They described a civilization on Mars, most of which was in ruins and was vastly ancient, but other parts of which still survived under the surface. He described the honeycomb of cities under the surface of Mars, and some structures on the surface, which were like relaying information and being used as transportation beacons, and had been built by this civilization that is still active under the surface of Mars, cities that are subterranean. But this all came from out of discussing the moon.
Mm-hmm.
When you put the remote viewing data next to Brandenburg's thesis, what it suggests, and Brandenburg, his estimation was that this nuclear event in Cydonia took place maybe 100 million years ago. Maybe 100 million years ago.
Jesus.
When were the dinosaurs killed off?
Well, anyway, so this is Brandenburg's research. He's just like a renowned scientist, so he's not like some kind of crazy guy or something. He also worked with NASA, like Bergani says. So this is the evidence of a massive thermonuclear explosion on Mars in the past, the Sidonian hypothesis and Fermi's paradox. So of course this is a theory, right? It's not fact, but except of course for the radiation and the isotopes that they found. That's factual, right? That's real. That's in fact true. So that's interesting.
I definitely believe those remote viewing story because they have been proven right again and again, and everybody knows that I was a disbeliever in that until I researched into it. So remote viewing stuff, especially from Joe McMoneagle and Ingo Swann, both of them doing the same thing, giving similar stories, that means something.
So and that's where I want to go next, right? Because also remote viewing, and when you think about remote viewing, what's remote viewing? And that's also what Skip Atwater talks about. And that's I had these timestamps ready where he sort of talks about what is remote viewing. Like it's non-locality, like it's everywhere all at once. There's no now, right? There's no sense of time and space, right? You're everywhere all at once. And he also connects it to dreaming, right? What's dreaming is basically another modality of being, right? We say like, oh, it was just a dream, like it was nothing. But who knows, right? We don't really know what dreaming is anyway, right? Life can be a dream in a sense.
Yeah.
And remote viewing is actually, which we're going to jump into, a way to look at something in the past or in the future, and anywhere where you want, right? If it's on Mars or on Earth, it doesn't really matter. So, and does remote viewing work? Well, we're gonna look.
6 remote viewings, 5 of them were first place matches. Dr. May told me that it was like very easy to match my remote viewings.
So what's a first place matching? What does that mean?
Well, there's 4 places, first place through 4th place. 4th place is no similarity to the target at all. 3rd place, maybe 20% similarities, which is chance. 2nd place is produced some valuable information, but it's not good enough to say it's actually the target. 1st place, no doubt.
Wow.
That's the target, and it's practically drawn. And in fact, I do very detailed drawings, so it was pretty easy to match my stuff. Turned out to be the best series of 6 ever done at SRI. So when I got back, my desk was empty, and the general sent me out to join the crowd at Fort Meade.
Could you possibly give me like an example of an early test that you've done that really, like you said in your own words, knocked your socks off?
How about if I show you? Okay, this is Angela Ford, and this is her entire drawing, and there's stuff that looks like that. There's some hills in the back and water in the front here and so on. And what the target was, randomly selected, was this.
My goodness.
The other interesting piece, which is new research, is, do you know the term synesthesia?
Hearing color and so on and so forth, and all the variations of that.
Yeah, exactly correct. And every single one of our top remote viewers are synesthetes.
One of the things I got recruited for at SRI International is so they could continue to use me for collection and white rat me in the lab, hit me with things that they were studying, that sort of thing.
Okay, let me show you something from Joe.
This one.
Okay, what you have here, this was in the lucid dreaming study, Stanford University. And we told Joe that if you get lucid, get out of your body, go to the room next door, where we have an envelope on the wall, open the envelope and study the photograph that's in that envelope, come back, wiggle your eyes, we'll wake you up and you tell us what you saw. So this is the only thing that he drew. And he says, key mountain, barn or large cabin, shadow mountains, trees and road. He also said path, American Rockies, or maybe the Alps. I think it is in fact the American Rockies. He said, I could not find the effing envelope. I searched all over that lab. He said, but I knew I was dreaming. So, clicked my heels together and said, I want to go to the place where the photographer stood when he took the picture that's in the envelope I can't find. Because what was in the envelope was this. Yeah, that's the right response. I could not draw it that well looking at the damn thing.
That is even like almost to scale. What percentage of studies bear fruit that are this ripe? Like, what percentage of those studies, with Joe specifically, let's say?
20%. Like that, like that accuracy. And he painted it from a dream, right? So it was a lucid dream. So they put the envelope in a specific...
It's way more than just like remote viewing, because also I think it was Joe McMonagle. He had out of body experiences before. I think somebody poisoned him and he almost died. So he have a very different kind of a past other than other remote viewers.
And then you can sort of ask, okay, this is interesting. I mean, I found it pretty mind-blowing. This is a really good documentary. Go watch it. It's on Area 52. But then, what about the secret services, right? How much did they use this research or this Project Stargate? And I want to play this clip to sort of give you
before that, I think he was doing a lot of OBE, out of body experiences, and then generals or CIA, whoever was working with him, told him not to do that, just focus on remote viewing. But he was also an expert on out of body experiences, and I think this lucid dreaming is a part of it. So he remote viewed during lucid dreaming, which is OBE.
Yeah, and if it works, right? If this is real, and it kind of looks like it, then that sort of is a demonstration of what we've been talking about. That there's not really a space and time, that it's all now. So
the people who brought stuff to us were absolutely, thoroughly agreed with what we were doing.
Here are the 19 agencies. That's the Army. There's the CIA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, there's the DIA, FBI, and so on, right? And the numbers on top of these bar graphs are the number of times independent chimes with different new missions that each of these places came back with new missions. And the all-time record here is 172 separate missions. A joint task force after the Cold War was over was set up here in the San Francisco Bay Area called Alameda. Their mission was to interdict contraband drugs coming in by the sea. So they would task us and the people at Fort Meade saying, okay, hey, 2 weeks from today, precognition, where can we board this boat in U.S. territorial waters? They came back 172 separate missions. They loved us. We were damn good at that job.
And this was are these missions all declassified at this point, or?
Almost none of them are.
The original science is.
Yeah, that's also very interesting, right? Because a lot of people, that's what we also talked about last time when it came to unlocking the mind and these children who are gifted, so to speak, and who can use telepathy and that kind of stuff. That they that basically the criticism or the people, the debunkers, they say like there are no studies that prove that this stuff is real, right? So it must be fake. But if nothing is declassified, then basically all the studies that prove or might prove that this stuff is real.
I don't even understand the claim. It is, look, it is out there. Like the people who were involved in those programs literally coming out and giving actual proofs. In fact, what's his name? Hal Puthoff was on Joe Rogan podcast explaining all those things. So any critics of this thing is stupid at this point because they don't make any sense. A lot of that work, including the CIA documents, are declassified, and we know. That's how I changed my mind by reading the actual declassified stuff. I know a lot of that is classified, but whatever is out there is enough to prove what they're saying is true. And they have worked in SRI. It's not like a secret location which cannot be verified. They were doing that. They were publishing a lot of the stuff from 70s. Nobody was taking care, like paying attention to that, but the information was out there. A lot of that is declassified, and it's enough to prove whatever they're saying. So that's why I just have so much resentment for the scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson and all those university professors, because they have created their own bubble, and anything which try to go outside of that, they just disregard it. Don't even consider it. That's why I don't trust those guys anymore. And I was a big fan of them until 2020.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I have to sort of hurry up.
Yeah,
okay. I still got some clips, so I want to stick with Joe McMonagle a little bit, and also let's stick with Mars for a little bit and the claims of Boris, and then we'll end up with Razor Giorgiani and we and the Bitcoin time travel theory. So.
Okay. That 1991 video game?
Well, let's wait and see. first, let's see. I think I got the right one here. Oh, wait. No, I got the wrong one. So first one, this. Yeah. I think I had like 30 clips open, so it's almost like a maze for me.
Is that the ceiling is very high, walls very wide.
That's a canyon, and that's the pyramid. Now, what's really interesting about this particular pyramid, you notice it's sitting on the side of the impact crater. And that's a real trick, because that means the pyramid had to be put there after the impact crater. Because if the impact crater hit after the pyramid was there, it would have destroyed the pyramid.
Now there's one picture there. I got to tell you, it bothers me a lot, and the reason why it's an impact crater, and there's shadow lines around the impact crater. And I asked the guy at JPL, I said, how high do you think the walls are in that impact crater? And he said, probably around 2,500 to 3,000 feet. And I said, wow, you know, well, there's something on the edge of the impact crater couldn't be there then. Because if the impact had actually occurred after it, it would have blown it out of the box.
The other interesting thing about this picture is you can measure the shadow of the crater, and based on the angle of the sun, you can estimate the size of the crater wall as being 3,000 meters tall. That's a 20,000 meter tall pyramid. Pretty big, huh?
The shadow around the impact crater is very small. So they've obviously done some analysis of the pictures. The shadow on this thing on the edge is 2.5 inches. It runs off the negative. So I said, so how tall is that? And he looked at me and went, that's really tall. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, I don't know.
Yeah, right. But that's another temporal anomaly, right? The pyramid shouldn't be there.
It is one of the strongest evidence that this was built by something. It cannot be a natural formation. But even if it's not a pyramid, let's just say, but
whatever it is,
nothing can survive that kind of meteor impact. So something was built there.
Yeah.
It is impossible. Technically, it is impossible anything to be survived after that kind of impact. And nothing else is around there, because you can't have one lonely mountain which actually survived that kind of thing. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that area colloquially is known as the city of Mars, right? Because there's a lot of structures.
Cydonia, the whole province is Cydonia. They have a lot of structures like that. But yeah, this is I think the strongest argument that it was built by something. We don't know what.
So let's stick to Mars one more time, and then we'll move on. And that's this one.
From place, very close. Move from the point you are now in this time to 34.6 degrees north, 213.09 east. Subject. The cluster of squares up and down, it's like you want to make them square anyway. They're almost flush with the ground, and it's like they're connected. Something very white or reflects light. Monitor. What's your position of observation as you look at this thing that reflects light? Subject. I'm amid oblique left angle. Sun is weird.
Next to the last target, I said something about the sun looked funny. And he said, I'm not interested in the sun, I'm interested in the GPS location I just gave you. Well, I'm assuming this is all earthbound stuff, because that's the only place I've ever used GPSs.
Monitor. Look back down at the ground now, and we're going to move just a little bit from this place, 34.57 degrees north, 212.22 east. Subject. It's like I can just perceive, like a radiating pattern of some kind, it's like some really strange intersecting kind of roads that are dug into valleys, where the road is just a little below the edge. Monitor. Tell me about the shapes of these things. Subject. They're like real neat channels cut They're very deep. It's like a road went down. Monitor. And moving now to 15 degrees north, 198 degrees east. Take some time and get back deep. Subject. See the intersecting, whatever these are aqueduct type things, these rounded bottom carved channels like roadbeds. See pointed tops of something on the horizon. Even the horizon looks funny and weird. It's like different, misty. Like it's really far away, very vague. Monitor. Okay, another movement now to 80 degrees south, 64 degrees east.
This is a general area. Pyramid's huge, but different this time. The reason these were different is because they were a cluster. These are like shelters from storms. Designed for sleeping, I specified hibernation, sleeping through savage storms.
Subject. See pyramids. Can't tell if it's an overlay or not, because they're different. Monitor. Okay, do these pyramids have insides and outsides? Subject. Got both. And they're huge. It's really it's an interesting perception I'm getting. It's filtered from storms or something.
So I'm reporting on that. I said apparently it's got some kind of chambers that people are trying to survive in by being put in an altered state and stored like in case they can exist long enough for somebody to find them. Hibernation chambers of some kind.
I'm asked to find out why.
Monitor. Say that again. Subject. They're like shelters from storms. Monitor. These structures you're seeing? Subject. Yes, they're designed for that. Monitor. All right. Go inside one of these and find some activity to tell me about. Subject. Different chambers, but they're almost stripped of any kind of furnishings or anything. It's like a strictly functional place for sleeping, or that's not a good word. Hibernation, some form. I get real raw inputs. Storms, savage storms, and sleeping through storms. Monitor. Tell me about the ones who sleep through the storms.
They're an ancient people trying to survive. It's past their time and age. They're waiting for the return of someone sent to find a new home.
Subject. Very tall, again, very large people. But they're thin. They look thin because of their height. And they dress in like, oh hell, it's like a real light silk, but it's not flowing type of clothing. It's like cut to fit. Monitor. Move close to one of them and ask them to tell you about themselves. Subject. They're ancient people. They're dying. It's past their time or age. Monitor. Tell me about this. Subject. They're very philosophic about it. They're looking for a way to survive, and they just can't. Can't seem to get their way out. They can't seem to find their way out. So they're hanging on while they look or wait for something to return or something coming with the answer. Monitor. What is it they're waiting for? Subject. There evidently was a group or a party of them that went to find a new place to live. It's like I'm getting all kinds of overwhelming input of the corruption of their environment. It's failing very rapidly, and this group went somewhere, like a long way, to find another place to live.
I had a sense that their atmosphere was stripped away or destabilized when it passed to the tail of the comet.
I get a globe. It's...
Anyway, this is enough. But it sort of corroborates some of Boris' claims. Especially, for example, also he talks also about long, tall people, right? 12 feet tall people. And of course, the destruction of the atmosphere and time travel and space traveling people who lived on Mars, right? And some other features that they also share. And I actually also found this. I think you probably also know that, but with Skip Atwater, It turns out that it was Skip Atwater who actually gave Joe McMonagle those coordinates on Mars. So it was Skip who did that. We're gonna talk a little bit after this clip. Right, I have to.
Joe, he had mentioned remote viewing a pyramid on Mars, and I believe the year was 2000 BC. Do you have any recollection of that?
I sent Joe to Mars.
You're the one that sent him there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just kind of relive that experience? Actually, let me start with a preliminary question. How did that pop up on anybody's radar? Why did you even give Joe a specific grid coordinate on Mars with a date?
I don't remember. Right. I mean, I even have that on video and the whole thing on my computer, which I'll send you and you can listen to it. But I don't remember actually why I did that.
You don't remember why somebody gave you a coordinate to have Joe McMonagle remote view Mars?
I would rather say what I just said, and that is I don't remember why I did that.
Okay. What did you think when Joe discovered the pyramid through his experience?
Well, I tended to believe him on a couple of things. I had, during the thing, this might have had something to do with put off, because I asked some questions about it of put off. Anyway, the planet is a different size than ours. So you had to be careful about what he said. One time he looked at the sun and he said, "What's wrong with the sun?" I said, "Joe, we can't study that right now. We have to look at this coordinate here," and the coordinates on.
Oh, we got disconnected?
Coordinates don't matter anyway. He's just doing what he's doing. And if I say it, go check out the peanuts, okay. Wouldn't mean anything. And then he came back down and I said, go over there and go over here. And then he said, Mars used to be a healthy planet, but it got hit by something. And I said, "Are you saying it was something exploded, something was destroyed?" He says it was like an asteroid came and hit the planet, and that tore the atmosphere off of it. And for millions of years now, it's just been deteriorating after it lost its atmosphere. And then he said, and there's some people in the pyramid thing. I don't know if he just said building or a pyramid, but he could have said pyramid. And people hid in there knowing that the comet was coming. They wanted to create an environment where they could survive and then come out after the destruction of the terribleness. And I said, "Well, can you go?" And he was able to go back in time. I told him to go back in time till before that hit. And he described, tall aliens and so forth and so on. And I said, "Well, how about now? Can you go inside the pyramid?" And he said, "Oh, no, it's been too long." It's been a long, long time, and they're all dead now. They didn't survive. And then he said, but some of them didn't go into that. Some of them took off, like they had a spaceship of some kind and they took off. And then he described something that looked an awful lot like Earth before the Earth got torn apart by, a young Earth with volcanoes and stuff all around there. Like out of the frying pan into the fire was kind of the thing I was saying. It's like, that's as far as they could get, but at least it was off Mars. Now that I think back, it might be that Puthoff had something to do with trying to get me to do that work, because I remember talking with him about it. I'll send the movie to you and you can see it.
I would appreciate that. Would it be okay if we put some of the clips into this interview as we talk about it?
Sure, because then you would have it to show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we have to make a part 2 because
we have to end because I'm getting calls as well.
Yeah, it was just too much. I have too many clips. Actually, I think
it's an interesting topic. I think we should do a part 2 of that next week, whenever.
I think we should.
Yeah,
and then we'll try to figure some of the other, because there was a lot of recent stuff that I also wanted to tackle. Right, the new interview with Catherine Austin-Fitz. The new Whistleblower that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp interviewed, and there was a lot of other stuff that we haven't even talked about. And then there was the Gaffe by Lue Elizondo, who said there was a UAP on the picture, and it turned out to just be a cornfield. So there was like a ton of other stuff. But let's say this was the preliminary episode 1 of time travel and time anomalies, and then we'll do part 2 next weekend.
Yeah, I'm good with that, and let's do that.
Yeah, because we are running out of time, and Douglas wants to do his show, and we want to thank everybody for joining us. If you have any questions or comments like Douglas, just throw them in the chat, and then we'll pull it up during the episode. And I hope you had a great time seeing some new stuff and having your mind blown.
But
do you have anything to add, Sid?
No, I'm good. We'll talk everything next week. And I'm just getting so many calls from my home, so I need to check what's going on. So
take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.